accountability review boards. One from 1999 and one from, I think, it was back in the 1980s, immediately after our embassy was blown up in Beirut, Lebanon.
Right.
Okay. Both of the accountability, one was an accountability review board. The other one was, I think, the Inman Commission, which was a blue ribbon panel. Acted in the same thing. They made their recommendation that the Secretary of State personally review the security arrangements and make sure that there was adequate security. This guy talks about, the security of our people is absolutely, it says very, very important, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't in Benghazi, Libya.
At least not on September the 11th, 2012.
So, what Gowdy is trying to get at is who dropped that ball? Who was it that did not send the security? Well, we know it was Hillary Clinton. She was Secretary of State, and she is ultimately responsible for all decisions made during her tenure there, including security decisions.
But she doesn't want to own up to any of her responsibility there. It's already been alleged that anyone who had anything to do with Hillary scrubbed anything remotely close to damning evidence against her. It's already been scrubbed from the record. All of those documents were removed before she even left the State Department.
Cheryl Atkinson has just blown the lid off a story about this, and this select committee is going to be delving into this issue, that a fellow walked into the room where Hillary's people were in there removing documents. And he's like, what are y'all doing? And they're like, well, we're taking anything out here that might make Hillary look bad. And he's like, is that unethical? And they're like, well, we've got our orders. Okay. So they were removing documents. It's also already come out in the committee hearings that this accountability review board, which was so independent, right? Okay, it was independent of the State Department, blah, blah, blah. Well, Admiral Mullen has already, in a previous hearing, owned up to the fact that, Hillary's people, he called and told them that Hillary's chief of staff, it would not be advisable for the accountability review board to interview her because she's going to be a real bad witness. It's going to make her testimony would make the State Department look bad. So maybe you don't want to send her down here. Okay, and they didn't. They did not send the woman down to talk to the accountability review board. The accountability review board didn't interview the woman because her testimony could have made Hillary look bad.
Just when you think the Warren Commission was a stacked deck, along comes the Accountability Review Board for Benghazi in September 2012.
So if they're actively seeking to cover up things out of the State Department, how are they independent of the State Department? If the people on the commission will be privately communicating with the people they're investigating, saying, hey, you might not want to send this witness.
Well, see, the thing is there's terminology for the scenario you just described. There's terminology for that in the law. Yes, it's called federal obstruction of justice.
That's an awful dirty word there, Mr. Marty.
Yes, I know. I know it sounds harsh, but the fact of the business is that when you try to cover up crime or criminal activity by obfuscating the government when it's trying to investigate.
It would only be obstruction of justice if the Justice Department was trying to prosecute. See, that's how they get around all this.
Well, that's true, too.
If this was a trial,
if
anybody was on trial, that would be an illegal act that could result in prison time for people. Because that you're talking about a criminal charge. But see, that Accountability Review Board, they don't have any legal jurisdiction.
That's true. That's
and
true.
And they can't
Which is why this
anybody.
administration has fought so strenuously against appointing independent counsel.
Yeah.
Because they would have that authority to bring criminal charges.
See, it's perfectly okay, apparently. I'm just saying, I'm alleging this.
Okay.
It seems to be perfectly okay for people to lie and obscure the when they're subpoenaed and brought in front of the people's representatives in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay.
Wait. It's okay if you happen to work for a Democrat. Now, if you happen to work for a Republican,
yeah, there could be jail time for that.
there would be jail time for that. Under any Republican administration,
Ask Ollie North.
these same Democrats, like Elijah Cummings, who stutters and stammers and stomps their feet and says, these hearings are they're a waste of time, just like he said about the IRS hearings,
Mm-hmm.
or any of the investigations into any activities of this administration. They're a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have no business second guessing
The executive
President
branch.
of the United States.
Yeah.
You have no business being critical of anything that comes out of the executive branch, as long as they're a Democrat. Now, we were talking earlier. At this point in the game, during George Bush, during I think 2006, 2007, somewhere around in there was like 127, 129 different news stories
about the president's poll numbers.
Yeah, just about the poll numbers. There have been, I think the other day they said total ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, 9 between them. Mm-hmm. 9 stories.
And what's even interesting about that is that NBC has partnered, they've been partnered for years with Wall Street Journal.
Right.
To do polling on the presidential approval ratings. 5 times this year, NBC, Wall Street Journal, has polled to see what the president's approval rating is on overall and foreign policy, domestic policy, et cetera, et cetera. Well, like the most recent poll, for instance, showed that President Obama has an overall 40% approval rating, but it's somewhere around like 32% approval for his foreign policy decisions.
Ooh, those are pretty damaging numbers.
Yeah, but see, the 5 polls that NBC was involved
commissioned.
Yeah, well, they haven't reported on not one.
So they've asked for these poll numbers, and then when they get them, they're not reporting on those poll numbers because it would reflect poorly upon the president. Is that what you're saying there?
I believe. Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
However, under a Republican administration, during the same amount of
times or 126, whatever.
Over 120 different news stories and segments just on those numbers alone.
Just on approval rating. Just on the
to show that, because the American people deserve to know the truth
about what a Republican does.
Exactly, or about how the rest of the nation feels about a Republican president.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it happens to be a Democrat or a president that's, part of a minority, well, we can't report those numbers. That would make us racist.
See, the irony here, folks, is that it's not even ironic. This is just one of those things. Back when George Bush was president, none of the polling places, the pollsters, called us to ask us how we felt about George Bush and let us assign our approval or disapproval of him.
I would have had some things to say.
We would have been saying, no, we don't like what the job he's doing. Okay, nobody asked us then. But when he was president and we were on the air and we were discussing politics, we said, George Bush is doing a horrible job. We wanted him impeached for the Patriot Act.
Just that by itself was impeachable.
We also
to us.
called for the impeachment of Congress for voting to abdicate their responsibilities and authorize him to go use force in Iraq.
True that.
Instead of doing their responsibility and declaring war. Okay, so we were pretty clear about how we felt it. All right, now we're conservatives.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're honest. So don't I doubt we have very many Democrats listening to our show, but don't come back and say that we're slanted in one way or the other. Because no, when the president's doing a lousy job, it's
I don't care what party he's representing,
and we're not even reporters. We're not journalists, but we do comment on the news. We do comment on politicians, but we're honest about it.
And I personally am quick to point out the shortcomings of the Democrats, because quite frankly, someone's got to. Because you're not going to get it from anybody in the mainstream press. They're certainly not going to point out any of the shortcomings of the Democrats, because many of them are registered Democrats. Many of them are fundraisers for Democrats.
Many of them leave their jobs in the mainstream media and go to work for the Obama administration.
Bingo was his name-o. I mean, look, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, last week or week before last, she is the head of the DNC, the Democrat National Committee. She is their head, their chairman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She says that people like Rand Paul are taking women by the back of the hair and pulling their heads back, yanking their heads back. She laid out this violent domestic abuse scenario to say what the Republicans are doing, or to show what Republicans are doing to women, to sort of, reemphasize the Republican war on women. She compared what they, she basically accused the Republican Party as a whole as being a bunch of rapists or domestic abusers. Now, if a Republican had made that comment, if Reince Priebus had made an asinine comment like that, there would be calls for his job. There would be calls for his head.
Every network except Fox.
They would be playing an audio clip of him saying it over and over and over again. It would be on political commercials, saying, the Democrats would have their political commercials playing a clip of him, Reince Priebus saying this and saying, this is what you can expect out of Republicans. But no. The head of the DNC said it, so therefore it didn't happen.
It gets buried.
Even when members of her own party are disassociating themselves from Debbie and her big mouth.
Right before I came in here to get ready to do the show, I had just read an article. Boy, Debbie Downer is in deep doo-doo.
She may not survive
Democrats.
the midterms as far as her job at the DNC goes.
Yeah, she's probably, number one, Obama doesn't even talk to her.
But they're not reporting it, though, Casey. That's just it. The mainstream press is not going to report that because it is coming from a Democrat. It is happening to a Democrat.
Right.
Were it happening to a Republican, you remember when they accused that one lady that was running on the Republican ticket, somebody accused her of witchcraft.
Right.
And she even did a commercial that said, "I'm not a witch," which made her look really stupid.
And it lost the election for her.
It lost the election for her. But it lost because it was aired
on every network.
10 times a day.
Yeah.
10 times a day. It made its way into other political ads saying, this is what you can expect from the GOP.